Parshas VAYISHLACH, the inner dimension, insight into the weekly Torah portion by Rabbi YITZCHAK, GINSBURGH. Parshas VAYISHLACH, Dinah's assault and its remedy. The gravest incident can bring a change for the better, and even the most painful trauma can be healed. Dinah, daughter of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land, and Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, and he took her and lay with her and assaulted her. This tragic episode relating to Jacob's daughter, Dinah, can be approached from two different angles. Either it can be viewed from the perspective of the people involved in the act, or it can be viewed from God's omniscient perspective. From our earthly perspective, rape is one of the cruelest, most unforgivable acts that demands that the victim be rescued from her assailant. In this context, Dinah's brothers, Shimon and Levi, took her attack to heart and adopted an extremely severe approach. The Lubavitcher Rebbe emphasized that from an educational perspective, there are some things that are so sanctified that their desecration touches the very essence of the soul, which is above all reason. Despite Jacob's criticism, this fraternal act of self-sacrifice to avenge their sister's honor is an example with which we should identify. However, what happened once the episode was over? Shechem and Hamor could no longer interfere, nor any of the city's residents, and Dinah returned home to her family. Any act of violence leaves the victim with a deep scar on his or her soul, and a broken spirit that is difficult to heal. Indeed, the sages teach us that after meting out justice on the city of Shechem, Shimon, the oldest of Dinah's two fraternal saviors, did not suffice with polishing his sword and returning it to its sheath. He took sincere care of his younger sister by marrying her. This was permitted before the Torah forbade marriage between siblings. In her desperate moment of need, with no idea how to deal with her pain, he endeavored to alleviate her misery. Elevating fallen sparks. The way to truly heal a wounded soul is to transcend the mundane and rise to a higher perspective. Shechem's act was an atrocious deed, but the inner dimension of the Torah reveals that there is a divine purpose hidden even in such an act. The Arizal taught that although no one at the time was aware of it, somewhere deep down in Shechem's mean, contemptible soul hid a holy spark that needed to be released from its prison and elevated to a new level. This spark could only be extracted by contact with Dinah, as alluded to in the phrase, "His soul clung to Dinah, Jacob's daughter." The good element of Shechem's soul escaped and clung to Dinah's soul, so much so that it became attached to the holiness of the Jewish people. With his spiritual insight, the Arizal revealed Dinah's reincarnations through the generations. Amongst others, Dinah was reincarnated as Abigail, wife of Nabal the Carmelite, whom King David married after Nabal's demise. Later, she was reincarnated once more as the wife of the evil Tinius Rufus, who converted to Judaism, and subsequently Rabbi Akiva married her as his second wife. The underlying theme in all of Dina's incarnation suggests that her task is to pass from the hands of someone evil to someone righteous, from Shechem ben Hamor to her brother Shimon, from the drunken Naval to King David, and from the evil Tinius Rufus to Rabbi Akiva. Each transfer further clarifies and elevates the sparks that were captured and concealed in the depths of the impure shells. Since they contain an element of divine insight, the data sources of the Arizal are indisputable. However, the dangers of misinterpreting his teachings must be made clear. Any benefit that may be gleaned from plummeting into the depths of sin can only be understood retroactively and cannot legitimize instigating such acts with prior intentions as some would mistakenly believe, misleading others to follow them in the name of Kabbalah. 3 types of refining. One type of God's service is the service of clarifications, by which holy sparks that were previously intermingled in mundane or impure realms are rescued from their fate to return to holiness. There are 3 principal methods by which we can refine these sparks. The first method is achieved completely a priori, when an individual consciously deals with mundane matters with the intention of choosing to do good, thus refining reality through his or her actions. In its perfected state, this is the service of the righteous, who perceive every act they do, even when it does not directly involve doing a mitzvah or refraining from sin, as an opportunity to refine reality. For example, every morsel of food that is eaten by such a righteous individual is consumed with the intention of clarifying the holy spark that is in the food. In other words, God's word that vitalizes it, and to elevate that energy by using it in his service of God. In this method of service, the righteous individual is in complete conscious control. He initiates the act and shapes reality to bring it to its desired goal. The second method of clarification happens when I find myself in an involuntary situation. For example, I arrive somewhere for a business meeting and make a blessing on a cup of coffee there. At the time, I am unaware that my entire journey was divinely ordained, so that a spark that was trapped there would be refined or elevated by me making a blessing, a fact that may only be revealed when my soul reaches heaven. This is how the Baal Shem Tov interpreted the verse, "And you shall go to the place God, your God, will choose." One should realize that one's travels from place to place are not one's own initiative, but because one is being led from above, the intention being to have his name dwell there. In other words, to disseminate holiness in that location. This can be achieved unintentionally by any Jew. It is good to always be aware of this teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, and to live in the comforting knowledge that no matter where I happen to be, I can always achieve something positive through my actions. The third method is, as we have seen with Dina, when an individual unwittingly falls into an adverse situation, God's intention to refine the world remains applicable under all circumstances. In Dina's case, she was forcefully assaulted against her will. In other situations, people may fall into sin, God forbid. Even though their sin is through their own erroneous choice, their act has a hidden purpose of which they are unaware. Nonetheless, they are held responsible for their own actions and must account for them. This is a difficult concept to grasp. As above, we must take care to remain within the boundaries of Torah law. This is the terrible plot upon mankind that God weaves for us humans, which includes all our downfalls. Ultimately, no one banished shall be banished eternally. Every fall that we may experience ultimately directs us to a fallen spark that can be rescued and elevated. Perhaps we will only recognize its purpose when Mashiach comes.